Hi, I'm Carol Butler, president of the Goering Center. If you're ready to level up your business, invest 30 minutes and explore our Business Boards Institute. I recently sat down with Goering Center members Terry Horan, CEO of Horan, and Greg Kling, CEO of Assisting Hands Home Care, as well as Goering Center advisors David Dye and Jim Miller, to discuss our turnkey approach to establishing an advisory board. You will walk away with a foundation in what a board can do for your business and understand just how easy it is to get started.
So what's an advisory board and what's the impact of the board? Let's go ahead and move into the next slide and just talk about, if we think about a board's role can be to support you as a leader, add credibility to your decisions, because of course, before you make your decision, you've got what the Bill Barkalow story was. We're not here to answer your questions. We're here to question your answers. Challenge the thinking. And on one board of advisors that I sit on, the question that came to the board was, we want to invest $1 million in the business. And they'd kind of come to a quasi solution. Well, let's add another building or extend on this building. And kind of, it was like, that's how they were going to plan it. So the board challenged them to think differently and said, well, what would be the best use of that money as opposed to making the decision about expansion? They got some team members involved. They were manufacturing environment. And so they got some of their supervisors and folks that work on the floor involved. And instead of spending $1 million, they spent $600,000. They used the footprint that they had. They restructured the flow on the floor to become more efficient and more effective. And they had $400,000 left over to do something else with. So that was the kind of challenge that was just something as simple as that to come through. The holding accountable, a couple of you said that's what would really be valuable. That can be the uncomfortable part, but you know what? That's the breakthrough. That can be the push through. That can be the tremendous opportunity when somebody now you're held accountable a little bit more to say, did you follow up on this? Did you take care of that? Where's the strategy? Where's the plan? And then also about being a resource in the event that you can't serve. One of the best practices we talk about here in the Goering Center is having a contingency plan, because the world is unpredictable. To the best of our efforts, there's no guarantee for tomorrow. One of our volunteers that serves on a board of advisors for a private company, the president passed unexpectedly, like overnight. And the board stepped in to operate the company until they could find a replacement for that individual. Because who better than the board? They knew the business. They had an outsider's perspective. They were already understanding of the strategy and where the company was headed. And they were able, especially while the family was going through significant grief, they were able to hold the space, keep the business going, and manage through that transition. So there can be so many aspects to the board that can really be helpful to you when you think about that. So we've talked about advisors, and we've kind of used the term boards in kind of a big kind of way. But there are a couple of ways to look at this. One is board of directors. And if you're a public company, corporations are required to have a board of directors because they're there to protect the shareholders. We also have boards of advisors, roundtables, and then business advisors and mentors. And, and I would just, we put on that business advisor mentors, a little bit about accountants, lawyers, bankers, the folks you go to on a regular basis to ask their opinion and perspective. But here's a great comparison sheet for those of you who are like, help me understand the differences. So the board of directors, and you see that this is one of those great summary documents you'll want to hold on to. And I'm sure Lisa will be sending the information out to you after the session today, if it hadn't already been sent. So the purpose, focus, structure, powers, composition, liability. One of the key differentiators in the board of directors is that they have fiduciary responsibilities. And so you report as a business owner, you would report to the board. And the board of directors I mentioned that we started up last year, that was the intention of the CEO, is like, I intentionally, for the future of this business, I want a board of directors because when I retire, still want it to be family owned, but want it to be professionally managed as a company and board governed. And so very actively selected board members who had that oversight, that experience, and that knowledge, and to protect the business. And that was a key thing. It's like, I want these board members who are going to protect this business for the long haul. So that's a key differentiator. So who's the focus for the board of directors? It's all the shareholders. That could be one shareholder. It could be 100 shareholders. It depends on how your company's structured. There are bylaws that you're governed by. And so the board of directors has a little bit more rigor to it, frankly, a lot more rigor to it. What are the roles and responsibilities of board members? Elected officers making decisions. There's a voting process, again, pretty formal voting process of how decisions are made, how things move forward. Composition, owners tend to usually sit on the board, can be a spouse or another family member, or can be business partners, but otherwise it's outside representatives. And that's the benefit of having that outside perspective. The liability for both board members and for the organization, there is a significant legal exposure. This is the place where you would have director and officer insurance. Our board members here at the Goering Center, for example, we have a board of directors. They have fiduciary responsibility for the organization, and we do have insurance to help cover them. So should something unforeseen happen, which we hope never does, but the world can be a surprise sometimes. So that's the distinction of the board of directors. Please throw questions into the chat box so we can hit these along the way, because that may be a bigger tool than you see for your job. And frankly, most of what we recommend for a first time out of the gate, and maybe forever, is what you would have as a board of advisors, really designed to meet those strategic goals. And so you've heard me talk about board charter. In essence, that's the strategy for the board. Like, what is the reason for having a board? And we talk a lot about that charter may be what you need right now. You may rewrite that charter in 6 months or 2 years or 6 years, because you've accomplished what that initial effort was. Now you're ready to say, okay, so now where from here? And what's the next piece? The board's built to advise leaders and owners, and the focus is all about the goals of the leaders and owners of the business. So it's about being, really focusing on your business, not getting down in the weeds in the business. The structure, non-binding guidelines. That charter we talked about, which is established. So again, a little less formal, but can be very equally powerful, because you've got great leaders who are able to help give you expert advice. Ultimately, the leaders and the owners make the decisions. So the board advises, and then you make the decisions from there. Now, the board might push a little bit and help make sure you make those decisions, but ultimately those are your call. Composition, independent outsiders. We encourage you, don't fill your board with your existing bankers, lawyers, accountants. The idea is get some people that are going to bring different ideas. You already have those folks on your strategic team, if you will. They're already advisors to you as a business. Now you have this wonderful opportunity, as Greg and Terry said, to get some people who will bring some different views to you, and very little legal exposure, right? It's an advisory board. Michael brought up the idea of roundtables, and we have over 20 roundtables here at the Goering Center. They're about peer learning and support. So this can be almost like a personal board of directors that can take you both through what are some of the family issues, what are some of the maybe more personal things you want to share. Can be on the education basis. We have speakers come in, could be professional development. Wonderful opportunity to connect across the community and get exposed to other business leaders and how they think. Now, the focus is the needs and the wants of each member. The moderator and the members come together to figure out what the key agenda items are that they want to work through each time. The group norms are developed through the group itself, like what's appropriate. Do we want to feature one organization for each meeting, or do we want to give everybody 15 minutes a time? One of our roundtables, their mandate is that you have to bring your financials and you have to expose those each meeting. And if you're not getting done what you got done, boy, they're a big accountability board, accountability roundtable. That's not necessarily the norm, but it's a group of very intense type A's, and that's the way they like it. That's why they're together as a roundtable. Powers, none, usually 6 to 10 members on a roundtable, and there's really no liability to the aspect of a roundtable. It's a group of people coming together. So let me stop here for a moment, see if there are any questions at this point, boards of directors, advisors, or roundtables, or any comments from Dave or Jim that I maybe missed something that they want to do a shout out on. Give me a thumbs up if you're good. All right, Jim says we're good. All right. So Board of Advisors, because that's our primary focus. So how's it work? A group of independent peers, and they advise you on the key topics. I think Terry did a great job talking about, we send out the board book ahead of time. We really want to do, that's just work that you can read ahead. And that is the responsibility of the board members as they come onto your board, is to be responsible, accountable for being prepared when they come to the meeting. But they can get all the nuts and bolts done before you get there, so you can get into key business decisions and what are the strategic issues of the business. The structure and the process, you design it, and that's part of the 7 steps that Dave and Jim would take you through, is that meeting structure. When do you want to meet? How many hours do you want to meet? Where do you want to meet? Most people have been meeting by Zoom here, as you might well guess, over the last year. The regular structure really helps that cadence and helps you think about on a quarterly basis, which is the norm of reporting out and just kind of keeping tabs on the business. But again, advises, but doesn't enforce actions. You can take the advice or not take the advice. The only thing I've heard as a watch out at some point is, if over time you don't take any of the advice of the Board of Advisors, you got to stop for a moment and say, well, what am I, either I'm not playing or I'm not listening, or you got to do a little gut check on the advisors. But we find in general, people are delighted to have the helpful advice because it can accelerate your strategy, get you in the fast lane, as we're talking about here. The investment, yes, you can typically see a bottom line impact or top line revenue impact, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So there's a real tangible return. You can put real metrics to this. The charter may be expansion into Northern Kentucky, expansion into Canada, or regional expansion. So there may be something very demonstrative that you have as an outcome. And then the aspect of people really see a difference of how the business is focusing, because you've lifted up and now you're focusing on the things that are not urgent usually, but are very important. And those are the high impact benefits that will really help the business. All right, so what kind of experience do our board members have? Usually they've been a leader or owner, partner, C-suite level. So they've been CEOs, they've been business owners, they understand risk taking. They've been associated with lots of peers. They're connected in the community. Bill Barkalow's name comes up. Bill would tell you he's helped put together 500 strategic plans at a minimum, and Bill serves on a tremendous number of boards. So not only does he have lots of business experience, a guy like that has lots of board experience. So industry experience, depending on what you're looking for. If you need something focused in marketing, we try to find somebody who's got marketing. If you're in distribution, we try to find somebody that's got distribution experience, and somebody who has stayed relevant in the world. We find a lot of people who are still working, want to serve on boards. Sometimes people have time in their retirement years, but they want to stay very relevant. So by serving on boards, they stay connected, and they have a commitment to staying connected to what's happening in the business world and the economy today. I'm always very impressed, I have to say. The people that want to serve on boards of any size are phenomenal, and it's pretty extraordinary. So your expectations, what should you expect? You should expect people to be ethical and trustworthy. When part of the thing I think about boards too, it's about confidentiality. You want to be clear on what's confidential, what happens in the board meeting room stays in the room, and I think create those expectations of what's okay to talk about, what's not okay to talk about, and you should never be surprised by a board member being out of line outside of that room. You want people who are good listeners. You're really the one who needs to be there to talk, right? And you want your board members to listen. What are your expectations, right? What is it that you're trying to get out of it? Not what am I trying to put into it? You want people who can work collaboratively with your team as well as the other board members, and people who are willing to speak up when it's kind of that uncomfortable moment and say the thing that needs to be said in a gentle way. And my experience with one board is particularly, it's like we've learned that the leader is an introvert. So we have to be careful. We kind of plant the seed, but we don't try to get an answer out right away, because if we do, we don't get the real answer. We find like 2 days later, we get the real answer. So having the wisdom to know how to introduce a difficult topic, maybe not always resolve it in the moment, but understand with the leadership and the ownership of the company, kind of what's the best way to play that. And then of course, people that are a good cultural fit. In the interview world, I always used to say, can do, will do, fit. by the time somebody has signed up to want to serve on the board, they've been vetted to some degree that they can do it. They've got the motivation. In fact, we get calls like, am I on a board yet? What's going on? So we've got the will to do it. It's so important to have the fit. And I think a good example of big or small. So for those of you who are thinking, I don't know if I'm big enough to have this next level of board of advisors, Clay Mathiel, the founder of Aileron and the guy who sold Iams, the pet food company, for $2 billion. He said, if I ran a popcorn stand on the corner of 3rd and Main, I'd have an outside board. It's just tremendously valuable. So I think that puts it in the right scale and the right level. All right, so what makes the board successful? Really, you do. There's a key aspect of your leadership, your clarity, design, how you put it together, the purpose, the priorities, all the things that matter most to you, really getting clear on what you want to have come out of the board. Setting that annual plan. And as we talked about with Greg's like, oh man, I'm gonna have to go review my charter now. And I think that's perfect. Frankly, we're gonna be reviewing our strategy here at the Goering Center because it's 3 years and it's time. So how else does a board get to be successful? Yes, it's gonna be about your management as well, right? You gotta prepare. Ideally, you're preparing a week ahead of time and you're getting the materials together in a meaningful and impactful way. With one board I sit on, we asked them to create a dashboard. So we had a good sense of meaningful key performance metrics in the business. Just a one pager, don't create something that's not going to be useful to your business. But now the team is responsible on a monthly basis. They send the board a dashboard, and that's how we keep tabs on what's going on. Want to be able to manage those meetings. We have a mantra here: you start on time, you end on time, do good follow-up. That administrative part makes for a very professional board. And then, of course, the board member engagement is a big part of the success, making sure that people are listening, that you're also listening to the board, but keeping them informed and make it fun. This is not about, your board members aren't coming to serve because of the pay. Your board members want to come and serve because of the joy of being able to help advise and help lead, help you with your leadership of your company and help you be successful. That is the joy. It's a tremendously wonderful exchange of value. So some of the examples of strategic issues. Let me ask my team to weigh in here, some of my panel. I'll ask Greg or Terry, anything here on the strategic issues that really strike you as significant? Or anything about the prior slide as well, where I was talking about just how to have successful board meetings. So let me, yeah.
Well, I think obviously what you say on the general slide, the general part of this slide, strategic planning, organizational development are just really critical. And obviously the board's going to ask you hard questions about succession planning. We have found in our new board that we just set up for wealth in the last couple of years that they've been extremely helpful to us on the branding and also on putting together a merger between two of our wealth organizations, and they've been, and I think we were more, David, Jim, you might chime in on this, but I think we were far more pointed in what we wanted in the second board than we were in the first, in that we wanted that branding expertise, we wanted organizational development expertise, and I think we got that in spades, frankly. And so those are things that Carol, we look at very carefully through our board year, but obviously the annual budgeting process, there's a great focus on margin and how are we progressing with margin and revenue growth and making things happen where we do more with less is a very important idea in our board. Our new board has done exactly what you said, Carol, and that they want dashboard. They want a dashboard. And so if we show revenue growth, they want to know if it's because of expense management or is it because of sales growth. And so that was a sophistication we did not have. until they specifically asked for that. And that came from one of our board members on our new board, and we've adopted that for all the companies.
You know, and what a value. I mean, a simple question like that, like that's a game changer, and it causes you just like a huge head shift, like, oh, right. And the opportunity to walk through that door for different business performance.
Yeah. So obviously all of us are saying, well, geez, revenue, I mean, margins up pretty well from the pandemic. And what you realize, well, it might not be because of sales growth, it's because of T&E expense. And that should be obvious, but on the other hand, if no one asks the question, it might not be so obvious.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well said. Greg, how about you? Examples of strategic issues or things that have made your board successful?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, looking at this quadrant that you have here, I mean, clearly for us, it really has been this focus in this general category, strategic planning, or organization development is really, really key.
And Greg, I'm going to interrupt you just to speak up just a little bit more. I think really this is an outside voice kind of opportunity.
Yeah, right. So really it's been that kind of top left-hand quadrant, right? So strategic planning, organizational development, major personnel issues, haven't dealt with succession planning, crisis management. Those are all things that we've dealt with very specifically. If we do have a specific topic, it would, drop down into one of these other lower categories. For us, caregivers, managing our caregivers, managing caregiver turnover, the complexity of that, people management, those are all very, very specific targeted things that we would discuss. But for us, it really has been focused in these bigger strategic issues, particularly around expansion. That's probably been the biggest issue, and the people management around that we have focused on.
Yeah, great. So great examples of eye-opening pieces that you get from the board and how to utilize your board. So now I'm going to ask Dave and Jim to walk us through. So how's this whole process work? So, okay, I'm interested, I'm intrigued. Terry and Greg are great salespeople. I buy into what they're talking about. Now, if I want to move forward, what do I do? What's the first step?
So Jim, let me start this and then please chime in. And first of all, Jim and I today work together with Goering Center members. And Terry has talked about a situation where we came in to help his second group of companies. So the two of us take you through this process together. We work as a team, and when we come out there, we explain how all that works. But the big picture here is that first part of the process is we take the time to really get to know you, understand the history of your business, and really where you want to take it. We'll ask, hey, what's your BHAG? Where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? And then we'll go through a whole process, and we have a series of questions that you'll see. And so the key is we want to know where you are, where you want to go, and then help you put together the board that's going to help you get there. So Jim, those are just a bit of a highlight, but maybe you could comment more specifically or your own perspectives.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So really it is a turnkey process that, as the survey indicated once again, most people don't start boards because they don't know how to get started, and we'll address that. And our engagement goes through having your first 2 board meetings. So you're off and running, and by the time we back out. So our process really breaks down into getting to know you and helping you to articulate what your goals, what the purpose of the board is, what issues you want to bring to the board, and some of the logistical issues like how many board members am I going to have, what am I going to pay them, how frequently am I going to have meetings. So that's really the first couple of steps. Then we get into defining what kind of board members would be good for my organization in terms of what's their industry experience, what are their functional expertise, sales and marketing, human capital, those kinds of things. Then we go back into our database or board candidate registry and identify people who we think fit those attributes that would make good sense for that particular organization based upon not only what they need, what they've articulated, what they need, but the size of the organization. Can these people relate to a business that's a $10 million business? Or if you're a $100 million business, can they relate to that? And typically, most owner operators are looking for somebody who's been there and done that. So if I'm a $10 million business today and I want to be a $30 million business, show me some people who've scaled their business like that. We'll present them with a number of potential candidates, and they will pair that list and go and interview them and select who they want to have on their board. And sometimes the interview process, Terry and Greg, you probably interviewed some people and said, "Can I have all of them? I don't want to cut any of these people." But that's a hard decision to make. So once you've selected your board, then we're involved with the first two board meetings, and the biggest involvement is the preparation for the meetings, making sure that, and we've got examples and templates and all these things that we provide that gives you sample agendas, sample issues that you can, so you define them and bring them to the board, not half-baked, and other board materials that you provide. So that's our process.
Tim, can I add one comment to that too? Is that it's a two-way kind of match on this too. The board members have to feel that there's a good fit with what they're trying to do and their expectations of their board involvement as well. So it definitely goes both ways.
Yep.
Oh, great. I think that's very helpful. And so one of the things is this creates great dialogue. This doesn't happen all, in a couple hours, right? There's quite a process involved here. What's the fastest and the slowest? Maybe not the slowest. What's the fastest anybody's ever worked through this process? Or like, I'm so excited from what I've heard today. I want a board now. What do I do? How fast might I get that done?
Well, we ask that question if they don't ask us, and we've done it as little as 3 months. And sometimes it might stretch out, 4, 5, 6 months, but we will move as quickly as possible. Jim and I just started working with somebody last week who said, "I want to have a board by the end of June or early July." So we said, okay. So we're going to go back in there tomorrow with the candidates and review their draft charter, and they will have a meeting with great candidates within 3 months.
Perfect.
Yeah,
We will move. We will move at your pace.
I would just add that the big time delays are really related to scheduling interviews. You're going to go talk to 5 or 6 people, and you want to do that in a certain period of time. And then once you've identified the people, you got to get everybody on the same calendar to have your next board meeting. So it's not going to be, okay, here's my board, let's meet next week. They're busy too. So you have to provide adequate time, advance notice to prepare and have your meeting.
Yeah. So, but what you find is, my experience is people are pretty darn motivated and pretty flexible. They're here, they want to serve. So once you've made a decision, I think the machine starts to move, and that first piece. I will mention here, just because the thought came to me, is that also as you evolve through the years, you get your board set up, and we've talked a lot about term limits or rotating somebody off at some point in time. Should you need a replacement board member, we can help you with that service as well. And because we recognized, we've already been helpful to establish that first board. We've got that pool of candidates who are ready and willing to serve. And so we would hope if you're going through that, we might be a potential opportunity for you as well. All right, I'm going to turn it over to David Miller for just a moment, so you get to hear from David and you get to see David, because he is a key part of next steps. So David, turn it to you.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. If I could, I'm just going to, and good morning, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I just want to kind of extend David and Jim's conversation on that board that David just mentioned, that they're moving pretty quickly. So from the time I first met this individual to when David came out and started the process, David and Jim and I, it was about a week and a half. And, you know, that was just, they weren't a member. We talked, so we move at your pace, as David had mentioned, and, you know, we meet you where you are. So this is one where it just clicked. And so Dave and Jim are incredibly responsive, and that's what we do. So what are the next steps? You know, if there is, Lisa, is this going to be a poll? Or am I to
No,
read?
I'm sending a survey out after the
Okay.
program so folks can let us know what they're thinking. But basically, they have a couple of choices, to not do it, to do it with us.
Okay, pretty much what it says right here. Right.
Yeah.
Contact you. Will it have my contact information, or do we have that somewhere that?
I'm going to send that out after the program,
Okay.
along with a link to the recording and the slides.
Yeah, so bottom line is, if you are interested, please fill out the survey and I will follow up with anyone who wants to either have more questions or more dialogue, or if you want to start moving forward with the process, if you have enough information. That's what I do, and I'm here for you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, David. And that whole idea of, if you just want to talk about this a little bit more, you want to kick the tires on this a little bit more, David Miller's your go-to guy. He'll include Jim or Dave as appropriate. And, you know, to get to that next stage when you're ready, if there are other people you'd like to touch base with, or even reach out to Terry or Greg, there are a lot of folks who would be happy to tell you about their boards, their experience, and how things have gone. When I first came through the program, I was a volunteer many years ago and sat in on a different version of the Business Boards Institute. And Terry Segerberg of Mesa Industries was one of our panelists at the time. And she highlighted a couple of things. One, she said, I don't know how I ever would have survived. It was a family business without my board. And she was very open about just some of the tough stuff of a family business. And she also made a big point of, and I call my board members out of the meeting cycle. So we have our quarterly cycle, but they are all open and available to me. And she said, I was always amazed by that, because these people had come from bigger businesses doing bigger things. And she's like, I always felt, you know, like I was intruding, but none of them ever treated her that way. They always took her call and they took her time. And she said, that was invaluable to me as a leader in my business, to have that safe go-to to really engage with people. And I think that that's something to consider. Here at the board of directors for the Goering Center, I had not done this earlier on, but I now am doing a regular check-in with my board members. And it has been immensely enlightening. And Chris Ramos is on the call, he's on our board. And it's been very helpful for me to get a better perspective about what we're doing here at the center. And it also has given me a great perspective about the board members. And it's a much richer opportunity to to the experience overall. And it's kind of taken, for me, the whole board experience to another level. And since I've just started that, I can only imagine what the next few years will bring. All right, well, we're into our wrap-up phase. So I do want to thank our sponsors, our friends from First Financial Bank, McGowan Brabender, the Schuler Group, and Aileron. Another shout out to Terry Horan for being a sponsor as well. And let me leave you, since it's St. Patrick's Day, just with a quick little poem. It starts like this. May those who love us, and those who don't love us, may God turn their hearts. And if he doesn't turn their hearts, may he turn their ankles, so we'll know them by their limping. So with that, I wrap up today. Feel free to reach out to any of us. We're here for you. Safe travels, and may the wind always be at your back. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you all.